Hi, welcome to brainstemschool.com, and today we're going to talk about for loops. The reason we're talking about for loops next instead of continuing with lists is because in order to get the full benefit of lists, in order to understand what they do and how to really make them useful to you, you're going to have to understand how to iterate through them or walk through them. And in order to walk through them, one of the best ways to do that is with a for loop. However, before we learn a for loop, we have to learn what a range is. So in Python, there is another type called the range, and a range is created with a range function. So let's go over to the interactive window and assign a range to a variable. We'll call the variable myRange, and we'll execute the range function. And we have a 5 as our argument. So this is going to be a range of 5 integers. Now, if we were to ask what is the type of the myRange function, it tells you it's a range. If I were to print my range, it'll tell us it's a range from 0 to 5. But if we were to use a loop to iterate through the range, we'll see that it actually is a group of elements, and each of those elements is an integer from 0 to 5, but not including 5. Let's go over to our script window to take a look at this. So once again, we'll create a range of 5 ints, and we'll use a for loop. We'll say for single element in my range print single element. Now when you run it, you notice that each of the elements 0 through 4 happens in order. Now remember, we had a range of 5 elements, but none of those elements has the value of 5. So a range is a group of integers up to but not including the number of integers that you're telling it to create a range to. And you can iterate through or count through each of those elements in the range. So you may already be able to figure this out, but why is this useful for lists? Let's say we have a list of 5 elements. And then instead of printing the integer in the range, we're going to print the element in my list. Or if we want to see it in a more descriptive and explicit way, we can say a string telling us which element is which. And that's about it for the basics of how to use a list. You say for, and then you give a variable that each element in the range is going to have a value of. And then you have a range. Now, there are other ways to iterate through a list. This is how to get a range of elements and to access each element individually. This is not the way that Python intends you to use it, but this is a way that applies better to other languages. In Python, you actually don't need a range to iterate through a list, but ranges do find themselves useful in other contexts. So in Python, you can actually just iterate through the elements of the list itself. However, if you use this method, then there's no indication of the element number. So if you want to iterate through a list by index, you're going to need to use a range. If you want to iterate through a list by element, you don't need to use a range. You can simply do a single variable, which becomes each element in the list. And that's about it for today. Thanks a lot for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson and all the lessons. If you have any questions, please email me, mike@brainstemschool.com, or fill out one of the comment boxes on the website, brainstemschool.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and check out the ebook if you haven't already. It goes through pretty much all the topics we're going to cover in this basic introduction. And otherwise, stay tuned for another lesson the next couple of days, and have a great day. Have a great rest of the week. Be well. Happy coding.